Have you ever noticed that two people can live through the same moment yet walk away with completely different realities? One sees opportunity, the other sees threat. One feels supported, the other feels abandoned. The world didn't change, their mind did. The mind is not a passive observer of life. It is the sculptor quietly shaping everything you experience. Not through magic or mystical thinking, but through habit, through the way you interpret, label, and narrate the moments that unfold before you. Your inner commentary becomes the emotional climate you live inside, warm or cold, open or closed, peaceful or stormy. Most of the suffering we carry does not come from life itself, but from an untrained mind that reacts automatically, assumes too quickly, and repeats old stories without question. But once you understand how the mind shapes your inner world, something shifts. You realize that peace isn't hidden in the outside world. It's created from within. And the good news? The mind is trainable. It can be softened, strengthened, clarified, and guided. In this video, we'll explore 8 Buddhist-inspired mental shifts that completely transform the way you meet your life. Not by changing your circumstances, but by changing the mind that encounters them. These shifts are simple, profound, and quietly revolutionary. Because when you reshape the inner sculptor, the entire landscape of your experience begins to change. Let's begin. Shift 1. Train your inner narrator. There is a voice inside you that never stops speaking. It comments, predicts, judges, compares, and narrates every moment of your life. But here's the part almost no one realizes. This inner narrator is rarely trained. It simply repeats old fears, old assumptions, and old habits, and because it speaks from inside your mind, you believe it without question. Buddhist wisdom reminds us of a simple truth. A thought is just a mental event, not a fact. Yet the untrained narrator treats every passing thought as reality. If someone doesn't respond to a message, it whispers, "They're ignoring you." If you face a setback, it insists, "You're not good enough." If the future feels uncertain, it warns, "Prepare for the worst." We suffer not because these stories are true, but because we never pause long enough to question them. The first shift is learning to separate the moment from the narrative about the moment. When a thought arises, instead of following it blindly, try labeling it softly. This is just a thought. That single sentence breaks the spell. It creates space between you and the story your mind is telling. Suddenly, you can see patterns. Which thoughts come from fear? Which come from old wounds? Which come from self-doubt? And which are simply echoes of conditioning? When you step back in this way, the narrator loses its authority. It stops being the dictator of your emotions and becomes something far more manageable. A voice you can guide, shape, and retrain. And this is where the transformation begins. Because the moment you stop believing every story your mind tells, the mind becomes softer, the world becomes clearer, and you start to experience life as it is, not as your old narrator insists it must be. Shift 2. Choose what your attention touches. Imagine your attention as a narrow beam of light. Wherever that light falls, your experience grows stronger. Shine it on a worry, and the worry becomes larger. Shine it on a mistake, and the mistake becomes your whole identity. Shine it on a moment of calm, and suddenly the world feels softer. Attention is not passive. It is the gateway through which every emotion enters your mind. Most people let their attention flicker without awareness. It jumps from noise to fear, from distraction to irritation, from one unfinished thought to the next. And because the light keeps moving, the mind feels scattered, tense, and overwhelmed. But mindfulness teaches something radical. You can choose where your light falls. You can decide which part of your experience you want to grow. When something disturbs you, a message, a memory, a worry, notice where your attention has gone. Instead of letting it cling to the disturbance, shift it gently. This doesn't mean ignoring what's uncomfortable. It means refusing to feed it with your entire awareness. A tiny shift can change everything. Move your light from the disturbance to your breath. Feel the inhale. Feel the exhale. Notice the steady rhythm that was always there beneath the noise. This simple act returns your attention to the present, where clarity lives. The disturbance may still exist, but without the fuel of attention, it begins to shrink. You take back control not by fighting your thoughts, but by choosing what you illuminate. Over time, this becomes a quiet superpower. You stop being pulled by every emotion. You stop reacting to every story. Your light becomes steady, intentional, grounded. And the mind begins to reflect the calmness you choose to shine upon. Shift 3. Interrupt the momentum of old patterns. Every one of us carries a kind of invisible momentum inside the mind. Old fears, old reactions, old emotional habits. They all gather speed over the years, shaping how we respond long before we have time to think. This is why you might snap at someone you care about, replay past arguments in your mind, or fall into the same spiral of worry, even when you promised yourself you'd handle things differently. These reactions aren't who you truly are. They are echoes of habit, patterns your mind learned long ago and now repeats automatically. Buddhist wisdom teaches that the moment we become aware of this momentum, we gain the power to interrupt it. This is where the practice of the pause becomes deeply transformative. The pause is not passive. It is the mind's reset button. It breaks the chain between stimulus and reaction, allowing you to meet the moment with clarity instead of conditioning. When you feel yourself getting pulled into an old pattern, try this simple 3-step practice. First, pause for 3 seconds. Let the moment breathe. Let yourself breathe. Those 3 seconds create space that habit cannot climb into. Second, name the feeling, not the story, not the judgment, just the feeling. Anger, fear, tension, disappointment. Labeling the emotion lowers its intensity and reminds you that you are observing it, not becoming it. Third, release the first impulse. Let the initial reaction pass like a wave. You don't need to act on it. You don't need to believe it. You simply let it move through without grabbing it. Over time, this practice rewires the mind. Old patterns lose their force, and you discover a quieter, wiser version of yourself, one who responds with intention rather than habit. Shift 4. Turn challenges into inner training grounds. What if every challenge in your life wasn't a punishment, but a form of training? Imagine life as a vast inner dojo, a place where each difficulty becomes a unique exercise designed to strengthen a part of you that would otherwise stay weak or untested. This isn't about glorifying pain or pretending hardship feels good. It's about seeing discomfort not as an enemy, but as a sharpening stone quietly shaping your inner resilience. Most of us move through struggle with the same instinctive question: why is this happening to me? But that question deepens suffering because it places us in the role of the victim. Buddhist wisdom invites us to shift the question entirely. What strength is being carved here? Suddenly the focus moves from helplessness to growth, from resistance to understanding. The situation may not change, but the mind meeting it becomes stronger, steadier, more awake. Think of a martial artist stepping into training. They don't enter expecting ease. They expect resistance. They expect the body to tremble, the breath to shorten, the muscles to ache. Not because they love discomfort, but because they know discomfort is how technique forms, skill deepens, and strength becomes embodied. In the same way, life places us in emotional and spiritual training grounds, grief that teaches depth, frustration that teaches patience, uncertainty that teaches trust, and loss that teaches release. This perspective doesn't erase the difficulty, but it transforms your relationship with it. When you stop resisting every challenging moment and start softening into it, resilience grows naturally. You begin to realize that the mind tightens not because life is unbearable, but because resistance creates friction. When resistance softens, clarity has space to enter. You start seeing what the challenge is shaping: courage, humility, compassion, discipline. The next time life feels heavy or unfair, pause and breathe. Instead of collapsing into the familiar question of, why me? Gently ask, what is life strengthening in me right now? This small shift pulls you out of the storm and places you in the dojo, a place of purposeful growth rather than accidental suffering. In this way, challenges stop feeling like interruptions to your life's path and become part of the path itself. You realize that every difficulty is sculpting the mind, the heart, and the spirit into someone capable of meeting life with wisdom instead of fear. And with every challenge you train through, you become a little more unshakable, a little more grounded, and a little more aligned with the strength that has always been inside you. Shift 5. Stabilize the mind through daily appreciation. Gratitude is one of the most misunderstood practices in the modern world. Many people think it means forcing yourself to look on the bright side, pretending everything is fine, or trying to drown out pain with artificial positivity. But in Buddhist wisdom, gratitude is not about replacing the negative. It is about grounding the mind. It is the quiet act of returning to stability, especially when the mind is spiraling into fear, comparison, or longing. The untrained mind has a natural tendency to chase more success, more validation, more certainty, more comfort. This chase never ends because it is fueled by the illusion that fulfillment exists somewhere ahead of you, somewhere outside you. But daily appreciation interrupts that chase. It teaches the mind to pause, to soften, to recognize that moments of support are always present, even on difficult days. This shift matters because it works directly against one of the mind's oldest survival patterns. Our brains evolved to scan for danger. Thousands of years ago, noticing threats kept you alive. But today, that same wiring keeps you trapped in worry, dissatisfaction, and constant anticipation of what might go wrong. This is the survival bias, the habit of seeing negativity more vividly than anything else. And unless you learn to balance it, your mind becomes tuned to what's missing instead of what's here. Appreciation is not naive, it is corrective. It teaches the mind to widen its lens. Instead of noticing only what was stressful today, you begin noticing what supported you. Instead of replaying a single negative moment, you remember the many neutral or calming ones. Instead of living inside constant urgency, you learn to settle into enoughness. A simple evening practice can create profound transformation. Right before bed, sit quietly for a moment. No phone, no noise, no rushing into sleep. With a gentle breath, ask yourself, what is one moment from today where life supported me? Don't force yourself to find something extraordinary. Let something small rise naturally. Maybe someone held the door for you. Maybe you heard laughter in the distance. Maybe the sky looked soft for a moment. Maybe you finished a task that had been weighing on you. Maybe your breath felt calm for a few seconds. Bring that moment back into your awareness. Feel it. Let it warm the mind. Let it anchor you. This is not about creating a long gratitude list. It's about reconnecting with a moment that grounded you, one moment that reminds you that the entire day was not defined by stress. When practiced consistently, this simple act begins to rewire the mind. You start noticing supportive moments without having to search. You become less reactive because your attention naturally gravitates towards steadiness. The craving for more begins to quiet. Acceptance grows, contentment returns. Over time, appreciation becomes a kind of inner refuge, a place the mind can rest. A reminder that even in chaos, life offers small, steady points of light, tiny proofs that you are held more often than you realize. When gratitude becomes grounding instead of forced positivity, the mind no longer spins in scarcity. It settles into calmness. It stabilizes. And that stability becomes the foundation for deeper peace. Shift 6. Imagine the future you. And act from that identity. Now, most people think of visualization as daydreaming about future achievements. More success, more discipline, more peace. A different version of life where everything finally makes sense. But in Buddhist-inspired practice, visualization has nothing to do with fantasy. It is not about imagining a perfect future. It is about embodying presence, not outcomes. It is about stepping into the qualities you wish to cultivate right here, in the moments where your old habits usually take over. This is identity-based meditation, a powerful inner training where you don't visualize goals, you visualize yourself. Not the version of you who has everything figured out, but the version who meets life with calmness, clarity, compassion, and discipline. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine that version of you, not as a distant dream, but as someone who already exists inside you. See this future self walking through the world. Notice their posture, steady, grounded, unhurried. Notice the softness in their face, the way their shoulders don't tense at every difficulty. Observe how they breathe, not in panic or in pressure, but in awareness. Now place this future self in real situations you often struggle with. Imagine them receiving criticism. Do they collapse? Do they lash out? No, they breathe. They listen. They stay centered. Imagine them handling stress from the day. They don't rush. They don't drown in thoughts. They return to presence. Imagine them interacting with someone difficult. They respond with compassion instead of reaction. This is not wishful thinking. This is mental rehearsal. And neuroscience shows that imagining a behavior activates the same neural circuits as performing it. In other words, the brain doesn't fully distinguish between lived experience and vividly imagined experience. Every time you visualize yourself responding with clarity, patience, or strength, you prime your mind to act that way in real life. You are training micro behaviors, tiny shifts that accumulate into transformation. If you want to become calm, don't just wish for calm moments. See yourself being calm in the exact situations that usually take your peace away. If you want to cultivate compassion, visualize yourself softening in moments you normally harden. If you want discipline, imagine yourself following through even on days where resistance rises like a wall. This practice changes your identity from the inside out. Instead of trying to force yourself into a new version of life, you begin acting from the identity you want to grow into. The mind follows the image you consistently feed it. In Buddhism, this is similar to understanding your true nature, the idea that qualities like patience, wisdom, and kindness are not things you must acquire. They already exist within you. Visualization is the act of uncovering them, giving them shape, giving them a voice, giving them a place to stand. It is how you gently dissolve the layers of doubt, fear, habit, and conditioning that have been covering your natural presence for years. Identity-based meditation works because it aligns intention with action. Most people operate from the identity of their past, their wounds, their old stories, their familiar reactions. But when you visualize the future you and act from that identity now, you are signaling to the mind, this is who I am becoming. And when repeated consistently, it becomes, this is who I am. So the next time life challenges you, don't ask, how would the old me react? Ask, how would the version of me I am growing into respond? Then breathe, then act. One moment at a time, you begin stepping into that identity. Not someday, not later, now. Shift 7. Become a friend to your own mind. If you spoke to a child the way you often speak to yourself, how long do you think that child would keep trying? Imagine a small child learning to walk, wobbling, falling, standing again with shaky knees. When they stumble, you don't scold them. You don't say, you always mess this up, or what's wrong with you? You instinctively soften. You encourage. You understand that every step, even the messy ones, is part of learning. Now consider this. Your mind is that child. It is learning. It is growing. It will stumble. It will fall into fear, into doubt, into old habits. But harshness has never helped anyone learn faster. In fact, harshness destabilizes growth. The more aggressively you speak to yourself, the more your mind contracts, tightens, resists. It becomes scared of trying, scared of failing, scared of being seen. Gentleness, on the other hand, strengthens the mind. It gives it room to breathe, room to make mistakes, room to try again. And this shift, treating your mind as a friend instead of an enemy, is one of the most transformative teachings in Buddhist compassion, known as metta. Many people misunderstand metta as something you offer outward, to others, to the world. But the Buddha taught that loving kindness begins with yourself, because a heart that is harsh inwardly cannot offer genuine kindness outwardly. Look honestly at how you speak to yourself when you make a mistake. Do you call yourself names? Do you label yourself as not good enough? Do you repeat old stories of failure? Do you shame yourself into silence or pressure yourself into perfection? These habits don't make you stronger. They make you smaller. They teach your mind to fear itself. They turn the inner world into a battlefield instead of a home. To become a friend to your mind, you must learn the art of softening. Softness does not mean weakness. It means creating space for growth instead of demanding perfection. When your mind spirals, instead of saying, "What's wrong with me?" try saying, "Of course I'm overwhelmed. Anyone would feel this way." When you forget a commitment or slip into an old habit, instead of attacking yourself, try whispering internally, "I'm learning. I'm trying. I will take the next step with patience." This simple shift changes everything, because the mind listens, it responds, it relaxes when it feels safe. Think of how differently you move through the world when someone believes in you, when someone speaks to you kindly, when someone gives you permission to be human. Now imagine giving that same presence to yourself, not occasionally, but daily. A powerful practice to cultivate this is a short meta phrase you can repeat whenever the mind tightens, wavers, or falls back into old patterns. May I respond to myself with patience today? Say it slowly. Say it with sincerity. Say it until it feels like your own voice instead of a borrowed one. This phrase is not magic, but it is medicine. It teaches the mind to trust you again, to trust that it can struggle without being punished, that it can feel without being shamed, that it can grow without being attacked. Over time, this inner friendship becomes the foundation of emotional resilience. When you become a friend to your own mind, your mistakes become lessons instead of weapons. Your emotions become signals instead of threats. Your progress becomes steady instead of frantic. And your inner world becomes a place of refuge, not a place of fear. Buddhism teaches that suffering is amplified when we strike ourselves with the second arrow, the mental criticism that follows pain, fear, or failure. Self-compassion removes that second arrow. It allows pain to be pain without becoming punishment. It allows growth to be gradual without becoming a battleground. You don't need to perfect this. You only need to begin. Speak to your mind as you would to a child who is trying their best. Because that is exactly what your mind is. Learning, wobbling, rising, becoming. And every time you offer yourself patience, you take one step closer to the calm, grounded, compassionate version of you that is already waiting beneath the noise. Shift 8. Arrive. Fully. The present moment as a refuge. Most people spend their lives wandering through mental rooms that don't exist, regretting the past, rehearsing the future, replaying memories, worrying about possibilities. And yet the only place where life is ever actually happening is the present moment. But because we live so much of life in our heads, we forget to arrive fully in the one place that can hold us, calm us, and reconnect us with ourselves. The present is like a house where you've forgotten you live. Its doors are always open, its rooms always warm, its light always steady. But instead of staying inside this peaceful refuge, the mind keeps running down old hallways of fear or into imaginary futures that haven't been born. We wander, but we rarely come home. Buddhism teaches that the present moment is not just a concept, it is a place, an inner shelter you can return to at any time. But you must remember the way back, and the path home is through your senses. Sensory awareness is the doorway, the feel of your breath, the texture of the air, the sound of a distant bird, the weight of your feet on the ground. These simple experiences are not distractions, they are invitations. They pull you out of the mind's storms and into the clarity of now. When you anchor yourself in what you can hear, feel, see, or smell, you are stepping across the threshold of presence and re-entering the home you abandoned without realizing it. Peace is often misunderstood. People imagine peace as a flawless moment, the perfect day, the perfect relationship, the perfect silence, the perfect version of themselves. But perfection is a fantasy, a moving target that keeps the mind chasing something it can never catch. Peace does not come from perfection. Peace comes from presence. It arrives the moment you stop leaving your own life and finally show up for it. Even if the moment is messy, imperfect, or uncertain, it can still be peaceful if you are truly here within it. Presence does not demand that life be calm. It simply returns you to the part of you that is always calm beneath the noise. Throughout your day, you will drift away from the present without even noticing. The mind will start spinning stories. It will jump ahead into fear or fall backward into memory. This drifting isn't failure. It's human. The mind's habit is movement, but your power lies in recognition. The moment you notice you've drifted is the moment awareness wakes up. And in that moment, you have a simple, powerful instruction. Come home. These two words are a gentle doorway back into yourself. When you feel overwhelmed, say, come home. When your thoughts spin, say, come home. When anxiety rises like a wave, when disappointment tightens the chest, when doubt clouds the mind, pause, breathe, and whisper inwardly, come home. These words remind you that you have not lost the present. You simply stepped outside of it, and with one breath, one sensory anchor, you can return. To strengthen this shift, begin practicing presence in small, ordinary moments. When you drink water, feel the coolness on your tongue. When you walk, notice the contact of your feet with the ground. When you sit, feel the support of the chair beneath you. When the wind touches your skin, let yourself truly feel it. These tiny gestures are not trivial. They are how you rebuild your relationship with now. Over time, the present moment becomes familiar again, like a childhood home you once knew by heart. As this connection deepens, something beautiful happens. You stop feeling like you're waiting for life to begin. You stop postponing peace. You stop imagining that understanding or happiness will arrive someday. You realize you have always had access to the refuge you craved. And every time you return to it, the mind quiets, the body softens, and the heart feels a little less scattered. Coming home to the present moment is not an escape from life. It is the only way to truly live it. When you are here, fully here, you meet life with a clarity and steadiness that cannot be shaken by every passing thought. And eventually you discover that the present moment was never empty or ordinary. It was always rich, always alive, always waiting for you to return. So each time you notice yourself drifting, do not judge, do not panic, do not cling. Simply breathe and say, come home, and feel yourself arrive again in the one place where peace is always possible, now. Closing reflection. Walk gently with your own mind. At the end of all these shifts, remember this. True freedom doesn't come from forcing your mind to be quiet or perfect. It comes from befriending it. Thoughts will rise and fall, emotions will move through you, and old patterns will occasionally return. But none of these are signs of failure. They are signs of being human. The mind softens not through control, but through companionship. When you stop treating your thoughts as enemies to defeat and begin meeting them as visitors to understand, something inside you loosens. The inner world becomes less of a battlefield and more of a home you are slowly learning to care for. Peace is not built in dramatic breakthroughs. It grows from small, repeated gestures. 3 seconds of awareness here, a moment of gratitude there, a breath that brings you back into yourself, a gentle whisper of, come home, when you begin to drift. These tiny acts may seem insignificant, but they accumulate quietly, reshaping the landscape of the mind the way steady rain reshapes stone. Over time, you notice you're less reactive, less tangled in old stories, less driven by the momentum of fear. You begin responding from clarity rather than habit. You begin walking through life with more steadiness, more warmth, more presence. So as you step away from this teaching, carry a simple invitation with you. Walk gently with your own mind. When it stumbles, support it. When it doubts, soothe it. When it wanders, guide it back with softness instead of force. The relationship you build with your inner world becomes the foundation for every outer experience. Treat it with patience. Treat it with kindness. Treat it with the same tenderness you would offer to someone you love. And with each gentle step, you'll discover that peace is not something you chase. It's something you cultivate, breath by breath, from the inside out.